Assalamu alaikum. Here are 2 tips for you if you want to be more mindful and more focused during your prayers and during your dhikr. With Ramadan just around the corner, it's truly so important for us to start focusing on the quality of our ibadat, and these 2 tips were personally very helpful for me during my prayers and when I'm doing adhkar. The first tip is gonna sound so simple, but learning the translation of Surah Al-Fatiha. You should understand Surah Al-Fatiha word for word. Whether you're an Arabic speaker or not, you should know the meaning of Surah Al-Fatiha word for word, because this is the surah we recite most often. And it's really hard to focus during your prayers if you don't know the meaning of what you're reciting or the significance of it. So learn it however you want, whether you want a Quran journal or whether you want to pull up a nice video or lecture that explains it for you. However you learn works, just as long as you know the translation and you know the meaning of Surah Al-Fatiha ayah by ayah. If you don't know the meaning of what you're reciting, it's inevitable that you will zone out and you won't be mentally present for the entire duration of your prayer. So this is one step to take to make sure to avoid that. You can even do the same for the surahs that you recite most often at the end of each rak'ah. So you can start learning the translation or the tafsir of the smaller surahs that are read most often, or whatever surahs you read most often during your prayers, to ensure that you stay mentally present. And if you find that to work for you, you can start moving on to learning larger surahs and their tafsir. This same exact concept applies for dhikr, because if you don't know the meaning of these phrases that we say in remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's going to be really hard to understand their significance, and it's going to be really hard to stay mindful every time you recite these phrases. A book I would highly recommend for this, especially for anyone who's a beginner, is Deeper into Dhikr by Omar Sulaiman. It defines each one of our phrases of adhkar or remembrance perfectly in English. It gives a nice explanation. It gives translations of each iteration of that phrase. Like, for example, it tells you subhanallah, but it also tells you subhanallah wa bihamdihi, and it tells you a bunch of other versions of that phrase that you can say as well. There's also a journaling section in that book that prompts you to note down specific things you want to think about when you're doing your adhkar to ensure that you stay mindful. The second thing that really helped me with prayer is learning tilawah of the Quran. When I first started learning how to recite the Quran, I honestly didn't realize it would have such a profound impact on my prayers, but it really does. Learning the tilawah and the rules of recitation and pronunciation in the Quran ensures that you stay really focused while you're reciting during your prayers to make sure you're reciting correctly. And there's a lot of rules and a lot of details about the language of the Quran, pronunciation, when to stop and when to continue, and so on. And beginning to learn these will 100% reflect in the way you recite when you're praying. And naturally, you'll go slower, you'll have greater attention to detail, and you'll be focused on those things that you learned that you want to now apply when you are reciting out loud during your prayers.